Well, I really asked it because you talk about a meeting with a liberal doctor.
Yes.
Who, what did he tell? I mean, set the scene for us. Where was it that you had this dinner? You remember?
It was at a friend's house, and who invited both of us to dinner, and I guess told him that I was a black conservative, and so when I walked in the door, he said, "I'm very proud to be a liberal." What I see as paternalism, he sees as genuine caring. And I suppose the crux of our difference is he thinks you should help people no matter what. I think people should help themselves no matter what. And that once they do help themselves, then obviously it's very good to support them. But he would support and give before they began to help themselves. And his idea is that there are people, and this is where we really have our painful disagreements. His idea is that there are people who are genuinely helpless and that have no real potential for helping themselves until they are lifted and helped by others. My feeling is that that's not true. There are certainly people who have disabilities and so forth who are helpless, and we don't disagree there. We ought to help. But my feeling is that people often are classified as helpless when they're in fact not. They just don't have the ideas and the values to understand that.
So Dr. Shelby Steele, author and self-described African American, A Little History of a Family Tree. His parental grandfather was born a slave in Kentucky. His father, Shelby Steele Sr., a black man born 1900, passed away 1976, worked as a truck driver for a printing company in Chicago, Illinois, while his mother, Ruth, a Caucasian woman born unknown, passed away 1983, worked as a social worker with a master's degree. Both of his parents were committed members of the Congress of Racial Equality, known as CORE. Formed in Chicago in 1942, CORE played a vital role in the civil rights movement. Subsequent decades, although as a child he resented having to attend CORE meetings with his parents, Steele nonetheless was invariably influenced by them. Dr. Shelby Steele, author and self-described African American conservative, was born in Chicago, Illinois on January 1946. Ph.D. in English from the University of Utah, Steele met his wife, Rita Silverman. They were students at CORE. Steele was active in the SCOPE project, a voter registration project of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He met Rita at an activist meeting. Steele attended the primarily white Cole College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where he majored in political science. In 1968, he earned a diploma as one of only 18 African American graduates in his class. Throughout his undergraduate education, Steele was active in the Summer Community Organization and Political Education SCOPE, a chapter of Dr. Martin Luther King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference, abbreviation SCLC. Although often overlooked, SCOPE engaged in highly effective black voter registration campaigns throughout the American South beginning in 1965. Steele continued on to graduate study, attending Southern Illinois University, where in 1971 he obtained a master's degree in sociology. He then went on to the University of Utah, where for 3 years he taught black literature, and in 1974 he earned a doctorate degree in English. Upon receiving his Ph.D., he was offered a tenured teaching position at the University of Utah. However, he declined the offer due to the lingering racial animosity he encountered in Salt Lake City. Specifically, it was widely known that Steele had married a white woman, and his interracial marriage was vigorously opposed by Utah residents. During this time, consequently, Steele in 1974 accepted a teaching position at San Jose State University in California, where he taught English literature until 1991. In 1990, Steele completed a public broadcasting service frontier documentary titled 7 Days in Bensonhurst, which investigated the details surrounding the tragic murder of Yusuf Hawkins, a 6-year-old black youth who unwittingly ventured into a white New York neighborhood. The film also exposed the varying degree of differences in public reaction to the murder among blacks and whites. The following year, Steele was awarded an Emmy Award, the Writer Glued Award, and the San Francisco Film Festival Award for his work. In September of 1991, Steele released The Content of Our Character, a new version of Race in America, to central acclaim. Among its most controversial positions, Steele argued that social programs like affirmative action had greatly disadvantaged blacks, stigmatizing them as a privileged class and those hindering their social achievements. With the book release, Shelby Steele emerged as a spokesman for a rising black conservatism, his writings surfacing in many well-known publications, including the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. Appointed a Hoover Fellow in 1994, Steele was later named the Robert J. and Marion E. Oyster Sr. Fellow at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University. He also authored 3 other books: A Dream Deferred, The Second Betrayal of Black Freedom in America, October 1999, Caucasians' Guilt, How African Americans and Whites Together Have Destroyed the Promise of the Civil Rights Era, May 2006. Then A Bond Man, Why We Are Excited About Obama and Why He Can't Win, December 2007. Shelby Steele currently belongs to the National Association of Scholars, the University Accreditation Association, the National Board at the Center for the New York American Community at the Manhattan Institute, and the National Board of the American Academy for Liberal Education.
They subscribe to an orthodoxy. They just do, and they really do subscribe to a racial orthodoxy in which it is appropriate to talk about blacks and the black experience in a context of racism and victimization, and it is inappropriate to talk about blacks and the black experience in a context of responsibility, of personal responsibility, just simply verboten.
Who establishes this?
It is a part of the culture. I think it comes from probably more from the faculties there than you'll probably find more variation often in the students than in the faculties.
How do they treat you when you go there to speak?
Coolly, with coolness.
Ever hostile?
Yes, yes.
What do they say to you?
They call me, I've been called names.
Like?
Uncle Tom, obviously, and I'm trying to, house slave, some ugly names.
Are these by whites or black?
These names have been by black students. But again, as I say in the book, they're not the majority. They tend to be a vocal minority, but they're invariably there. And as I also talk about in the book, that never bothers me. You expect that there's always a minority of people who have these feelings, but what often bothers me is the utter silence of the faculties and even the presidents of universities who would sit in the front row and tolerate this kind of breakdown in decorum, and be afraid themselves to stand up and say something to these students. So again, when I look back on it now, it was a blessing, because right there in front of me would be this whole dynamic of American race relations playing out. The lack of moral authority in the white community, so fearful of being called racist themselves, that they had no ability to enforce their own principles, their own rules of decorum. Black students, again, an activist core of black students, using that void of power to then assert themselves and demand things. Then other black students, so again, like the whites, afraid to stand up themselves and say much, because then they would be stigmatized, like me, as an Uncle Tom who's letting whites off the hook. And so then you're in a situation where this sort of small radical group controls the whole scene. And to some degree, that's America today. That's our race relations. We go to Louis Farrakhan and give him a great deal more media time and attention than we do to Thomas Sowell or Shelby Steele or any number of other people. Those are the ones who control the moral authority of the larger society and keep us in this sort of frozen our race or trading on our race. Rather than developing ourselves. I talk about in the book, when I look back at black history, one of the things I taught as a literature professor was black American literature and African literature, so I've done a lot of work in that area. And when I look back on black American culture, what makes me so proud is not our race, not our blackness, but our humanity. The fact that our blackness we never allowed it to defeat our humanity. It was our humanity that saw us through.
What's that mean?
What it means is that we now are very confused by that. We now think that I'm black and I'm proud, and it was my blackness that did something. Our blackness did nothing. It was used by white America at that time to oppress us. It was used against us and against our humanity. And our humanity was so tenacious. Our story is one of the great human stories in the world, that we were able to withstand that oppression and to persevere and come through to today. And to get to this point and now embrace our race rather than our humanity seems to me to finally have come to a point where we're almost agreeing with those who oppressed us. We I think, have to continue to fight for our humanity. And despite our race it has no talents, it has no special gifts, it's just a color. But as human beings, we have everything that all others have, and that's what I think we have to rely on.